The jungle moon of Varela was a place that most humans avoided. The air was heavy and filled with glowing mist. The plants reached high into the sky, their leaves shining faint green at night. Strange sounds echoed from every direction. Yet among this strange beauty stood a small human research station built on metal legs to keep it above the soft ground. Inside the base, a man named Darren worked quietly at his table. He was an engineer sent by the Earth Alliance to help keep the equipment running. He did not talk much. The others on the team often went out in groups to study the strange trees or to collect samples. But Darren preferred to stay near the machines. He found comfort in fixing things that followed rules. That morning, the main field generator outside the camp began to fail. Without it, the protective barrier around the base would weaken, allowing local creatures to come too close. Darren packed his repair kit and walked out into the forest. His boots sank into the soft ground as he followed the humming sound of the broken generator. He liked the quiet of the jungle. The strange birds watched him from above with bright eyes. The air smelled like wet leaves and metal. He reached the generator and began his work, unscrewing panels and checking energy levels. It was a simple job, and he hummed softly to himself as he fixed the wires. Then he heard something strange, a high-pitched cry that echoed through the trees. It did not sound like any creature he had heard before. It sounded scared. Darren froze and listened again. The cry came once more, sharper and filled with panic. He looked toward the sound. The cry came from deeper in the forest, near the swampy area that the scientists were told to avoid. Darren hesitated. The smart thing to do was to finish the repair and return to base. He was alone, and the swamp was dangerous. But then he heard another cry, weaker this time. It's like whoever was calling for help was losing strength. Without thinking too long, Duran grabbed his scanner and started moving through the thick trees. The ground grew softer as he walked. The mist thickened until he could barely see a few meters ahead. Then he saw movement, something small, struggling near the edge of a deep pit filled with dark mud. It was a child, but not a human one. The being had smooth silver skin that shimmered faintly under the light, and large green eyes wide with fear. She was half sunk in the mud, her arms reaching out desperately. Every time she moved, she sank deeper. Darren felt his heart race. The swamp mud of Varela was known to trap anything that stepped into it. It could pull down a full-grown person in minutes. He had to think fast. He looked around and found a long root sticking out from a tree. He tied one end of his safety cable to the route and wrapped the other around his waist. Then he took a deep breath and stepped into the mud. The cold weight pulled at his legs instantly. It felt alive, like it wanted to drag him down. He pushed forward slowly, careful not to move too fast. The child's eyes widened when she saw him coming closer. She tried to reach him but was too weak. "It's all right," Duran said softly, even though he knew she could not understand his words. He reached his arm out and used a small grab tool from his kit to pull a branch toward them. The mud resisted him, but he kept trying. His boots sank deeper, but he ignored the fear growing inside him. Finally, he reached the child. She was trembling, her breath short and fast. Duran reached around her and carefully pulled her free, using his strength to push them both back toward the edge. Every step was heavy. His arms burned with effort. The mud climbed up to his waist, and for a moment, he felt himself sinking too fast. He pressed a button on his belt, activating the cable reel. The line tightened, pulling them upward inch by inch. He used his free hand to grab a nearby branch and haul himself out of the mud with one final push. They both fell onto the dry ground, covered in dirt and shaking from exhaustion. The small alien coughed weakly, her silver skin streaked with mud. Darren turned her on her side to help her breathe. She looked at him with wide eyes, confused and scared, but she did not try to run. Instead, she made a soft sound, something like a hum. "It's all right," Duran said again. He gave her a small smile and pointed toward the camp in the distance. "Safe. You're safe now." The alien child tilted her head slightly as if trying to understand. Then she reached out with her small hand and touched his arm. Her skin felt cool and smooth. The gesture was simple, but something about it felt deep. Darren stood slowly, checking if she could walk. She tried to stand but stumbled. Without hesitation, he lifted her gently into his arms. She was light, almost weightless, and held onto his shirt tightly. The walk back to the camp was long and quiet. The jungle seemed to watch them, every sound sharper than before. Darren kept his steps steady, not wanting to scare the child. He could feel her heartbeat against his chest, fast but calming, when he finally reached the edge of the human camp. The security drone detected movement and sounded an alert. The other researchers rushed out, their eyes widening when they saw what Darren was carrying. "Is that a Velar child?" one of them whispered. Darren had heard of the Velar before, a powerful alien race that ruled many star systems. They were strict, proud, and rarely interacted with humans. He looked down at the child again. She looked so small, so different from the stories people told about the Velar being fierce and cold. The medical officer, Mira, stepped forward. "Bring her inside. We need to check if she's hurt." Darren nodded and followed her into the station. They placed the child on a clean bed, and the medical scanners began to hum. The results showed that she was weak but unharmed. Mira looked at Darren in surprise. "If you hadn't found her, she wouldn't have lasted another 10 minutes. Darren sat quietly nearby, watching the child sleep. Her breathing steadied, and she looked peaceful now. For a long time, no one spoke. The soft hum of machines filled the room. Later that night, when the others had gone to rest, Darren stayed beside the child. Something about her presence made him feel a strange connection. He wondered where she had come from. The jungle of Varela was vast, but it was not a place where a young being should be alone. Outside, lightning flickered in the sky, lighting up the forest for a brief moment. Darren looked through the window, feeling both tired and curious. He did not know that far above the clouds, hidden by the storm, a large alien ship had already detected the signal of their base. Inside that ship, a voice gave a calm but commanding order. "Prepare for descent. My daughter's beacon has been found." Down below, Darren did not hear the engines that began to move through the atmosphere. He only looked at the sleeping child and thought about how strange life could be. How one small choice could change everything as the rain began to fall softly over the camp. Darren whispered, "You're safe now." He did not know that those words would reach far beyond the jungle of Varela and echo across the stars. That night was quiet, but it was the beginning of something far greater than Darren could imagine. The morning after the rescue, the jungle air felt heavier than usual. A soft mist floated above the ground, glowing faint green under the twin suns of Varela. Darren stood outside the human research camp, tightening the bolts on the field generator he had fixed the day before. The hum of its energy field gave a sense of safety. But Darren could not stop thinking about the small alien child who now rested inside the camp's medical room. She had woken briefly during the night and looked at him with wide green eyes full of confusion and trust. She had said something in her language, soft and musical, but no one understood it. Then she had fallen back to sleep. Inside the base, the others talked quietly about what to do next. Mira, the medical officer, wanted to report the child's presence to the Earth's Alliance Command immediately. The team leader, Harris, worried that doing so might cause trouble if the Velar found out that humans had taken one of their own into custody. "The Velar are not exactly friendly," Harris said as he paced the command room. "If they think we kidnapped her, it could turn into a diplomatic mess." Mira crossed her arms. "We didn't kidnap her. Darren saved her life. She would have died out there." Darren listened from the doorway, unsure if he should say anything. He did not care about politics. He only wanted the child to be safe. While the humans argued, far above the planet, a massive ship entered Varela's orbit. Its silver hull reflected the twin suns like a mirror. The ship belonged to the Velar Dominion, one of the most advanced and proud civilizations in the known galaxy. Inside its command chamber stood Commander Solara, tall and calm, her presence commanding respect from everyone around her. Solara's green eyes glowed faintly as she stared at the holographic map of the planet. "Locate the beacon signal," she said in her calm but firm voice. One of her officers bowed slightly. It was activated yesterday near the human research zone. We have confirmed that it is your daughter's personal beacon. Solara's face softened slightly at the mention of her daughter. Then she is alive, she said. Prepare a landing craft. I am going down myself. The crew exchanged surprised looks. It was rare for someone of her rank to descend personally, but no one dared to question her. Within minutes, the Velar shuttle broke through the clouds, its engines leaving a glowing trail of blue light. Down below, the human base's sensors detected the incoming craft. Alarms flashed red across the control room. Harris shouted for everyone to take positions while Darren ran to the observation window. Through the thick mist, he saw the glowing lights of the alien ship descending near the clearing. What is that? Mira whispered. It's them, Darren said quietly. The VR. The shuttle landed gently, sending waves of dust across the clearing. Its surface shimmered like liquid silver. A ramp extended, and a group of tall figures in shining armor stepped out. Their movements were graceful, their eyes sharp, and glowing faintly in the dim light. At their center walked a woman with long silver markings across her face and a calm, steady expression. When she spoke, her voice carried through the air with strange clarity. Who among you holds the life of my daughter? The humans looked at each other nervously. Duran felt everyone's eyes turn toward him. Slowly, he stepped forward. His heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. She's safe inside. I found her in the swamp. She was sinking. I pulled her out. Solara's gaze moved to him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she walked closer until she stood only a few feet away. Her presence was powerful, but her eyes were not unkind. You entered the death swamp alone to save her? Yes, Darren replied. I couldn't just leave her there. Solara looked past him toward the medical room where her daughter was resting. She made a small gesture, and two of her guards entered to confirm. When they returned and nodded, her expression softened again. She walked inside and saw her daughter lying on the bed. The small Velar child opened her eyes and smiled weakly. Mother, she said in her soft language. Solara knelt beside her and touched her forehead gently. You are safe now, little one? Then she looked back at Duran. You saved what is most precious to me. The others in the room remained silent, unsure of what to do. Solara rose to her full height and faced Duran once more. Among the Velar, saving a life creates a bond that cannot be ignored. A life saved binds one soul to another. You have bound yourself to my family, human. Duran blinked, unsure what that meant. I only did what anyone would have done. Her eyes glimmered faintly. You were wrong. Many would have walked away. You did not. It was a long pause. Solara turned to her guards and spoke in her language. They stepped back respectfully. Then she said to Duran, You will come with us. The council must witness the one who saved the heir of House Solara. Harris quickly stepped forward. Commander, with respect, he's part of our team. You can't just take him. Solara turned her gaze to him. You misunderstand. I am not taking him as a prisoner. I am taking him as a guest of honor. Among my people, that is the law. The humans exchanged nervous glances. Darren felt confused, but also curious. He looked at the small child again, who now sat up weakly and smiled at him. She reached her hand out toward him, her expression full of warmth. Darren sighed quietly. If it helps her, I'll go. Solara nodded slightly, as if his answer confirmed something she already knew. Prepare him, she said to her officers. We leave within the hour. As the Velar prepared for departure, the humans watched in silence. Mira pulled Duran aside. Are you sure about this? You don't know what they'll do? I know, he said softly. But she's just a child. If my being there helps her or prevents some misunderstanding, it's worth it. When the time came, Darren followed Solara onto the Velar shuttle. The interior was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls glowed softly with living light, and the air felt cleaner than any he had breathed before. As the ship lifted off, Duran looked out the window at the shrinking human base. The jungle below looked peaceful again, hiding the mystery of what had just begun. Inside the shuttle, Solara sat across from him, her hands folded neatly. You are quiet, she said. I don't know what to say, Darren admitted. I didn't expect all this. You saved my daughter. That act carries great meaning among my people. The council will decide how the bond is to be honored. Until then, you are under my protection." He nodded slowly. "What's her name?" Solara's expression softened. "Lena," she said. "Her name is Lena." When the shuttle reached the main Veeler's ship in orbit, Duran was stunned by its size. It looked like a floating city made of light and silver metal. As they entered the docking bay, lines of Veeler guards stood in perfect formation. Every one of them bowed slightly as Solara and her daughter stepped out. The air felt different here, filled with quiet strength. Duran followed behind, feeling both out of place and strangely honored. The Veeler crew watched him with open curiosity. No human had ever stood among them like this before. Solara led him through shining halls, until they reached a chamber with high ceilings and glowing symbols carved into the walls. "This is the Hall of Bonds," she said. "Here, the council will hear your story." Darren looked around. "I don't know what they'll think of me." "They will see what I saw," Solara said softly. "A being who acts without demand. That is rare." He was silent, unsure how to answer. He could only look through the wide window showing the stars outside, endless and bright. Somewhere in those stars was Earth, far, simple, and small compared to this vast world. As he stood there, Lena walked up to him. She was smiling now, holding a small glowing crystal in her hand. She placed it in his palm and said something in her soft voice. Solara translated. "She says it is a symbol of thanks. She wishes you to keep it." Darren closed his hand around the crystal. It was warm to the touch. He gave Lena a small smile. "Tell her I'll take care of it." Solara nodded, her eyes calm but thoughtful. "You already have," she said quietly. Outside the window, stars drifted slowly past as the great Veeler ship began its journey toward their homeworld. Duran watched them in silence, not knowing that his act of kindness would soon make him a name spoken across the galaxy. The Veeler ship drifted through the dark space like a living jewel. Its silver surface reflected the stars, and its engines made no sound. Inside the great vessel, Darren followed Commander Solara through long, bright corridors. The walls were smooth and alive with slow-moving lights that pulsed softly, as if the ship itself breathed. Everywhere he looked, Veeler crew members stopped what they were doing to glance at him. Their expressions were calm, but full of curiosity. It was clear that humans were rare among them. Duran tried not to stare back, though everything fascinated him. The air smelled clean and faintly metallic. The floor beneath his boots gave off a soft vibration, steady and strong. Solara led him to a chamber that opened into a wide observation deck. The stars filled the view like glittering dust. Below them shone the green moon of Varela, slowly growing smaller. Duran stopped to look, his thoughts quiet. Solara turned to him. "You are far from your home now. Does it trouble you?" Darren shook his head slowly. "No, I just didn't expect to be leaving it this soon." "Oh, you left because you cared for my child," she said. "That decision has weight among my kind." Duran looked down at his hands. "I didn't think about weight. I just heard her crying." Solara studied him closely. "That is what I find strange about humans. You act before thinking, yet your actions often hold meaning beyond your understanding." Before he could answer, the door opened, and a young Veeler officer entered. "Commander, the council has been informed. They request your presence within the cycle." Solara nodded. "Prepare the Hall of Judgment. The human will attend." The officer bowed and left. Duran felt a mix of nervousness and curiosity. Is this council friendly? Solara's face remained calm. They are wise, not kind. They will judge what they do not understand. Soft sound interrupted them. Little Lena stepped into the room, her small hands holding a silver sphere that shimmered with gentle light. Her skin looked healthier now, and her green eyes brightened when she saw Duran. She ran up to him. Her steps light. "Lena," Solara said softly, but her voice carried affection. The child looked up at Darren and smiled. "Huna," she said in her language, a word that made Solara's lips twitch slightly. "What did she say?" Darren asked. Solara replied, It means safe one. She calls you that. Darren smiled back at Lena. She's sweet. Her name will be remembered longer than most, Solara said. You have given her a second life. Hours later, Darren was guided to the Hall of Judgment, where the Velar Council awaited. The hall was vast, its walls lined with silver panels covered in moving lights. At its center stood a circular platform surrounded by glowing symbols. 12 council members stood around it, tall and silent. Their silver robes rippling like water, Solara led Duran to the center. The air in the room felt heavy. When the council leader spoke, his voice was deep and measured. Commander Solara, you claim that this human saved your child? Yes, Solara answered. He entered the swamp of Varela alone and risked his life without expectation of reward. He acted with instinct born of compassion, not gain. The leader turned to Duran. Human, do you confirm this? Darren cleared his throat, his voice calm but quiet. I only heard someone calling for help. I didn't know who it was. I couldn't just walk away. The council exchanged glances. One of them, a tall figure with bright silver eyes, said, Among the Velar, courage is sacred, but it is always tied to purpose. What was yours, human? Darren hesitated. I don't think about purpose when someone is in danger. Maybe it's just part of who we are. There was silence. Then a softer voice spoke from the circle. You risked death for one not of your kind. That is rare in this galaxy. Solara watched quietly, her expression unreadable. The council leader stepped closer. Our laws say that the savior of a life is bound to that life. The child's fate and yours are now linked. What say you to this bond? Darren looked at the glowing floor beneath him. He did not understand the full meaning of their law, but he understood responsibility. He looked up and met their glowing eyes. If it means making sure she's safe, I'll accept it. The council members murmured among themselves. Solara's gaze softened slightly. Then so it shall be, the leader said. The human Duran is henceforth bound to House Solara. He will be treated as guest and kin under Velar law. When the hearing ended, Duran was escorted out of the hall. The corridors felt brighter now. Solara walked beside him, her long robe flowing silently. You handled the council better than many seasoned diplomats, she said. I just told the truth, Duran replied. She gave a faint smile. Truth is often more difficult than politics. They arrived at a new chamber filled with strange machines that floated slightly above the floor. It was a living quarters prepared for him. The walls glowed with a warm, golden hue. This will be your place while you are aboard my ship, Solara said. Darren looked around, amazed. The bed looked soft, the lights gentle. A small window showed endless stars. I don't know how to thank you. No thanks are needed, Solara replied. You are part of my house now. The bond is shared. Lena entered the room, laughing softly. She held the silver sphere again, this time floating it above her palm. The light danced across her face. Duran crouched beside her and watched. That's beautiful, he said. She says it is her learning sphere, Solara explained. It helps her remember and understand. She wishes to show you. Lena tapped the sphere, and it projected glowing shapes into the air. They formed small images, animals of her homeworld, silver forests, and vast oceans of light. Darren's eyes widened. Your world looks amazing, he said. Lena smiled proudly. Valara, she said, pointing upward, as if to show where her planet was. Solara watched them, her face calm but thoughtful. You speak simply, yet she listens closely, she said. It seems the bond is already strong. That evening, Darren sat near the wide window, watching stars drift by. The ship moved silently, like a dream through space. Solara joined him, holding a thin crystal tablet. You seem uneasy, she said. He nodded slowly. I've never been this far from home. Everything here feels alive and strange. Your fear is natural, Solara said. The VLR see the universe as a web of life. Each action touches another. You touched that web when you saved my daughter. The ripples will continue. Duran looked at her. Do you think your people will ever understand humans? Some already do, she said softly. But understanding takes time. We are proud, and pride often blinds. Oh. She stood quietly for a moment, then added, You changed something today in that hall. The elders saw courage without ambition. That is new to them. He smiled faintly. I didn't mean to change anything. That, Solara said, is exactly why you did. Lena ran into the room again, laughing, her energy restored. She climbed onto Darren's lap without hesitation and showed him more glowing shapes from her sphere. One image made him laugh, a clumsy drawing of himself standing beside her. She giggled when she saw his surprise. She says, You look funny. Solara translated with an amused tone. I guess I do, Darren said, laughing softly. Solara watched them for a long moment. There was something new in her eyes, respect mixed with something gentler. She realized that this human, simple and quiet, had done more than save her daughter. He had reminded her people that compassion was not weakness. The stars outside grew brighter as the ship continued toward the Velar homeworld. Darren looked out again, feeling a calm he had not felt in years. He did not know what awaited him there, but for the first time, he felt like part of something larger than himself. Solara stood beside him and said softly, You may not see it yet, but your presence among us will change much. Darren turned to her. I'm just an engineer. Solara smiled faintly. Perhaps, but sometimes the quiet ones move the greatest stars. As the night cycled deepened aboard the ship, Daron watched Lena fall asleep under the soft golden lights. Solara silently left the room, her thoughts heavy with new understanding, far away. The council members spoke quietly among themselves, wondering what the humans' arrival would mean for their people. Some feared it. Others felt hope. And in the middle of that vast and shining ship, one human sat by a sleeping alien child, holding a small glowing crystal that pulsed softly with light, the symbol of a bond that had already begun to change the stars themselves. The morning on the Velar ship began with quiet light streaming through the tall windows. Daron stood in his quarters, watching stars drift past the hull. Lena slept beside him, her small breathing steady. Though the ship moved silently, Daron could feel the subtle hum of engines under the floor, a constant reminder that he was far from Earth. Far from everything familiar, Solara arrived quietly, standing by the window. Her expression was calm, but her green eyes held thoughtfulness. The council will meet soon, she said softly. Darren nodded. I'm ready, I think. But I don't know what they'll want to hear. It will test your intentions, Solara explained. The Velar value courage, but they value intent even more. They will want to know why you acted as you did, and why you risked yourself for someone not your own kind.
Ow.
Darren took a deep breath. I don't know why I did it. I just couldn't leave her. I didn't think about anything else. Solara looked at him thoughtfully. That is the simplest answer, and it is true. Many beings act with expectation, with strategy, or with reward in mind. You acted without any of that. That is why your presence here matters. After a short walk through the softly glowing corridors, they arrived at the council chamber. The hall was immense, with walls covered in living light that moved like liquid. The council members were already present, standing in a perfect circle around a raised platform. 12 figures, tall and radiant, observed Daron with calm, piercing eyes. Solara guided him to the center. Human Daron, she said, these are the elders of the Velar. They will hear your story. Daron's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. I only heard a cry for help. The child was in danger and I could not leave her. I did not think about anything else. I just acted. The council was silent for a moment. One elder stepped forward, her silver eyes reflecting the soft light. You acted without expectation. You risked death for one not of your own species. Few beings in this galaxy would do the same. Why? Darren looked up at her. Because it was the right thing to do. I couldn't let her die if I could help. That is all I can say. The elders spoke among themselves softly, their voices melodic and low. Solara watched quietly, her expression steady. Finally, the council leader, a tall figure with glowing eyes and long flowing robes, addressed Daron. Among the Velar, acts of courage and compassion are bound to duty and law. A life saved creates a bond, one that ties your fate to the one you protected. You must understand what this means. Darren nodded slowly. I understand. I am responsible for her safety. That is enough for me, council members murmured again. One elder, her voice gentle but firm, said, Your words show honesty and simplicity. You have risked yourself without thought of gain. That is rare. We recognize the bond you have formed with the child, and we honor it. But you will remain under our observation until it is confirmed that your presence benefits her and that your actions are true. Solara stepped forward. This human has proven his courage and his heart. That is all any parent could ask for. The council leader inclined his head slightly. Then it is decided. Darren will remain as guest and kin of House Solara. His bond to Lena is recognized and protected under VLAR law. However, he must adapt to our ways and demonstrate that his care is consistent with his intentions. Darren felt relief and a strange sense of pride. He was a human, small and ordinary among these extraordinary beings. Yet he had earned their recognition through nothing but simple courage. After the hearing, Solara led him and Lena to the observation deck. The child giggled as she floated small spheres of light between her hands, showing shapes and colors that danced in the air. Duran laughed softly. She's learning so fast, he said. She is curious, just like her mother, Solara said quietly. And just like you have patience that is uncommon among humans and Velor alike. Darren shook his head. I don't feel special. You do not need to, Solara replied. Specialness is in action, not in thought. You acted without expectation. That alone marks you. Lena ran to him, holding another glowing crystal. See, Huna, she said in her language. Solara translated. She says, look, safe one. You have earned her trust completely. Darren smiled down at her. I'm glad she trusts me. The day passed slowly aboard the Velor ship. Darren observed their methods, how they worked in silence, how even minor movements had meaning. He learned small things, how to navigate corridors, how to operate certain devices, and how to respect the unspoken laws of the ship. Solara watched him closely, but allowed him freedom to explore. By evening, they were alone in a small chamber near the ship's engines. The view showed distant stars stretching infinitely. Darren sat by the window, feeling a strange calm. I never imagined life like this existed, he said. Solara stood quietly. Most humans never see beyond their world. You have seen courage, you have seen fear, you have acted. That is experience beyond most of your kind. Daron looked at her. Do you think your people will ever accept humans fully? They may, Solara said softly, but it will take time. For now, they will judge your actions. That is how understanding begins. Lena climbed onto Darren's lap, leaning against him, and floated a small light between her fingers. It created tiny images of the swamp and the jungle she had been found in. Darren looked at them, smiling. So this is where it all began for you. She nodded, her green eyes bright. She made a sound that Solara translated, Huna, protector. Daron laughed softly. I'm just a human. Solara's expression softened. Sometimes, the simplest beings make the greatest difference. Courage is not measured by strength or size. It is measured by heart. You have proven that in every way today. Night fell slowly across the stars and the ship moved silently toward its destination. Darren watched Lena sleep, her small chest rising and falling. Solara left him alone. Leaving the soft hum of engines and the quiet glow of lights, he realized something important. He was far from home, far from anything familiar, yet he was not afraid. His heart was quiet, filled with the sense of purpose that had guided him to save the child. The VLR might be powerful, wise, and proud, but they had recognized something more important than strength. They had recognized the human heart as the ship sailed through the endless blackness of space. Daron understood that this bond, this connection between him, Lena, and Solara, was only the beginning. The choices he had made, the courage he had shown, would ripple outward, touching lives and hearts far beyond what he could see. And in that realization, he found peace, patience, and a quiet confidence that no machine, star or law, could ever give him. He had risked his life for another, and in doing so, he had begun to change the galaxy itself. The Velar ship moved silently through the stars, its hull reflecting the distant light of countless suns. Darren stood on the observation deck watching the endless blackness of space dotted with brilliant points of light. Lena sat beside him, her small hand holding his. She had grown more confident during the voyage, her curiosity endless. Her laughter filled the quiet halls of the ship. Solara appeared quietly, her presence calm and commanding. "The council has completed its deliberation," she said softly. "Your actions are accepted, human. The bond is acknowledged, and your place among us is secure, but your role will be different now." Darren looked at her unsure. "Different? How?" "You will remain here, yes, but you will also share knowledge, help us understand humans, and teach us courage and simplicity," Solara explained. "The council believes that your presence can strengthen understanding between our peoples." Darren thought for a moment. He never expected to be so important, or that a simple act could ripple so far. "I only did what I felt was right. I don't know if I'm qualified for anything else." Solara's green eyes softened. "That is precisely why you are qualified. You act without desire for reward, without pride, yet your actions have meaning. That is rare among any species." Lena bounced in her seat, holding a glowing sphere that projected moving shapes into the air. "Huna, show star," she said in her language. Darren smiled and pointed to the stars outside. The sphere responded, forming small, glowing orbs that drifted upward like miniature stars. Lena clapped her hands in delight. "She will remember this," Solara said, watching the interaction. "And so will you. Every moment shared strengthens the bond between you." Later, Solara guided Duran to the training wing of the ship. Unlike human gyms, this room combined learning, observation, and challenge. Holographic landscapes of distant planets floated midair. Velar cadets practiced coordination and decision-making, not with weapons, but with strategy and empathy exercises. "You will participate," Solara said. "Not to fight, but to learn. You must understand how we think, and we must understand your methods. Mutual understanding is the strongest foundation." Duran nodded. He moved carefully through the exercises, amazed at how the Velar combined logic with intuition. Lena followed him closely, imitating the movements and laughing when she succeeded. Darren realized that learning this way was unlike anything on Earth. It was playful, yet precise. After hours of training, Darren found himself sitting with Solara in the quiet observation lounge. The stars drifted past, and the silence felt alive. "Do you think humans and Velar will ever truly understand each other?" he asked softly. "They will," Solara replied. "It takes patience. Courage, yes, but patience most of all. You have shown them what it means to act from the heart, without calculation. That is the lesson they needed." Duran thought of the swamp on Varela, of Lena's frightened eyes, of the mud that almost claimed both their lives. "I just did what I could. I didn't think about lessons. That is why it matters," Solara said. "You acted naturally. Nature is often wiser than calculation."
Days passed.
And Darren continued learning the ways of the Velar. He taught them small human techniques, how to improvise tools, how to solve simple mechanical problems, and how to rely on instinct when rules failed. In return, they taught him about their culture, their understanding of life, the depth of their sense of duty. Lena thrived in this environment. Her confidence grew, and she began exploring new areas of the ship on her own, always returning to Daron for reassurance. She was fearless in ways Darren admired, yet she was careful, learning the balance between curiosity and caution. One evening, as they watched a distant planet rise on the horizon, Lena rested her head on Daron's shoulder. "Huna," she said softly, meaning protector, and smiled. Darren looked down at her and felt a wave of warmth. He realized that the bond he had formed was not just a duty or recognition. It was trust, pure and simple, between two lives that had found each other across impossible odds. Solara approached quietly. "You have changed more than my daughter," she said. "You have changed how we see humans. The council spoke of your humility and courage. Your actions reminded us that strength is not always visible, and bravery is not always grand. It is often quiet and unnoticed until it is too important to ignore.
Ah!
Darren shook his head. I never expected to change anyone. I was only trying to help. Helping is often the greatest change anyone can make, Solara replied. Weeks passed, and the Velar ship reached its home system. The council convened to formally welcome Darren as a guest and recognized him as part of House Solara. This ceremony was unlike any human ritual. Light and sound flowed together, creating an immersive experience. Symbols of courage, life, and compassion floated around the chamber, intertwining to show the depth of the bond between Daron, Lena, and Vylor society. Daron stood beside Solara as Lena's small hand rested in his. He realized that he was not only an outsider accepted into a new culture, but a bridge between worlds. When the ceremony concluded, Solara turned to him. You may return to your people if you wish, she said softly, but the bond you have formed is permanent. You will always be part of our family. Darren looked at the stars through the observation window. He thought of Earth, of home, of the ordinary life he had left behind. Then he looked at Lena, laughing softly as she floated a small glowing sphere, and at Solara, watching with quiet pride. He understood that his place was not just in the safety of his old world. I will stay, he said finally, smiling. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Solara's expression softened into a rare smile. Then you have chosen well. Courage without expectation, compassion without calculation. That is the human way that we now honor. The days that followed were filled with shared work, learning, and quiet moments. Darren helped Lena explore the stars, taught her small Earth lessons, and learned the wisdom of the Velor. He saw the galaxy from a perspective he had never imagined, realizing that life, in all its forms, was connected by trust, care, and understanding. One evening, as the ship drifted past a ringed planet, Darren stood beside Solara and Lena. The light of distant suns reflected on the hull, casting gentle patterns across the deck. Lena placed a small glowing crystal in his hands. Huna, she said softly. Darren held it, feeling the warmth of trust and connection. He realized that the crystal was more than light. It was a symbol of life saved, of courage acknowledged, of bonds that stretched across worlds. Solara placed a hand on his shoulder. Remember this moment, human. Not for ceremony, not for reward, but for understanding. This is what makes you powerful, what makes humans special. The heart matters more than strength or skill. Darren nodded, gazing at the stars. I understand, he said, and I will remember. As the Velar ship sailed onward through the endless night, Daron, Lena, and Solara stood together. A small family bound not by blood, but by choice, courage, and compassion. And in that quiet truth, the galaxy seemed just a little brighter, a little kinder, and full of possibilities yet unseen. For Daron, the journey had begun in a swamp on a distant moon. But it had led him to something far greater, a new home, new family, a reminder that simple acts of courage could echo across the stars and change the course of life itself.